Welcome students. In this topic, we will learn about fillet lap joint on 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position using SMAW process.
Objectives.
At the end of this topic, you will be able to select appropriate electrodes for tack welding and welding process. Prepare and set plates in lap joint. Tack weld. Lap joint in overhead position using SMAW. Now, let us look at the tools required for a fillet lap joint on 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position by SMAW process. Steel rule, scriber, prick punch, ball peen hammer, flat file, bench vise, tri-square, tongs, chipping hammer, steel wire brush, electrode cable and earth cable, electrode holder, electrode, personal protective equipment, SMAW welding plant machine and their setup accessories, C-clamp. Now, let us look at the pre-welding preparations for fillet lap joint on a 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position by SMAW process. Wear appropriate safety gears. Cut the plates to 150 mm length by 50 mm width on a 10 mm thick MS plate. Clean the surface of the plates and file the square edges. Set lap fillet without gap and tack the plates at both ends. Keep the lapping distance as 20 mm. Clamp the weld for overhead welding. Keep the electrodes ready for each run. For root run, use 3.15 mm electrode and 110 amps current. For second and third run, use 3.15 mm electrode and 110 amps current. We have seen the pre-welding preparations. Now, let us look at the welding process of fillet lap joint on a 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position by SMAW process. Clamp the weld for overhead welding. Select a MS electrode 3.15 mm and set 110 amps current. Hold the electrode so that it bisects the angle of 45 degrees between the edge of the top plate and the surface of the bottom plate and is inclined slightly away from the crater, say 15 degrees. Lay the first bead at the root without weaving the electrode. Remove the slag from the bead using a chipping hammer. Clean with a wire brush. Use a MS electrode 3.15 mm dia and deposit the second run with 110 amps current between the first bead and the surface of the plate. The electrode angle 45 degrees is the same as the one mentioned for root run. Deslag the second bead thoroughly. Use 3.15 mm dia electrode and set 110 amps current. Deposit the third bead in between the first bead and the bottom edge of the top plate with a short arc and with an electrode angle of 45 degrees to the surface of the plate to avoid the edge melting off the top plate. Inspect the weld thoroughly. Now, we will look at the cautions to follow for a fillet lap joint on a 10 mm thick M.S.Plate in overhead position by SMAW process. Wear appropriate safety gears. Undercut. Uneven ripples. Craters. Spatters. Recap.
In this topic, you have learned to set the plate in a lap joint and tack weld them. Weld fillet lap joint in overhead position. Inspect the weld for any surface defects.